Here I am using the Minion Kit by Cakeframe. It comes with a 10-inch round baseboard, a 6-inch round platform. You will have 4 medium foundation pieces with lock nuts and 2 adapters. To make the legs taller, I am also using 2 of the long rods which you can purchase separately. You want to start by screwing the foundation pieces directly into the baseboard using the lock nut, just like so. As soon as both foundation pieces have been screwed into the baseboard, you then want to add each long rod to the base pieces. Now we need to add both of the adapters to each rod. And finally, the other 2 foundation pieces just go on top of each adapter. We will then be placing the 6-inch round platform directly on top of those and securing it in place with the 2 lock nuts. Now the frame is assembled, simply take it apart so that you leave the 2 base pieces in the base board, but you have extremely long legs. We're going to be working with this upside down. Here I have 250 grams of Rice Krispies. I have a saucepan filled with some butter. I will be using 500 grams of marshmallows, and I also have a lined 8-inch round half ball tin, which I will be using to create the shape underneath the M&M. So all I have done here is melted 500 grams of those marshmallows over a very, very low heat. And now I'm going to stir in those Rice Krispies. The reason I had butter in the saucepan, it helps to prevent the marshmallows from burning. So you do need to do it on a very low heat and take your time. Simply stir in all of the Rice Krispies, and then we will be adding this to the 8-inch half ball tin, which has been greased with some butter. This is an idea of how sticky they are and what they will look like when you have stirred in all of those lovely Rice Krispies. All we need to do now is add these Rice Krispies to this half ball tin, and I find that if you grease your hands with a little bit of stock or butter, it just helps, as they are extremely sticky. Once you have added it all to the ball tin, you really then want to push it down to make sure it's really, really well pushed in there. So this is what it should look like once you've pushed all your Rice Krispies down. And now we need to add some indentations. So I'm going to take off those long rods, try and place this so it's directly in the centre, and then push down straight through those Rice Krispie treats. So once you have pushed your cake frame directly in, you'll notice it leaves behind a little guide. I'm now going to add the rest of the legs on, just so that we can make sure that we push it straight through. I'm then going to use my hand to get those Rice Krispie treats out of the tin, push it directly through again, just so we've got 2 perfect holes, and then I'll just leave it in the tin for a little bit longer to let those Rice Krispie treats go lovely and hard. So now we have our basic guide. We need to cover this cake frame with some melted chocolate before we actually add the Rice Krispie treats to it. By adding melted chocolate, all it does is act like natural glue. Remember, we're working upside down at the moment, so these Rice Krispie treats are the underside of the actual M&M. So completely cover your frame in melted chocolate. We will then be adding those Rice Krispie treats directly to the frame using the guides that we've already placed on there. and placing this in the fridge. Once it's completely set, when this is tipped the other way round, those Rice Krispie treats aren't going to be going anywhere. They will be firmly glued to this frame, delicious and completely edible. So just before we place this in the fridge, I'm now going to add a lovely crumb coat. In total, I used 3 batches of my buttercream recipe, and I will leave a separate link to this tutorial for you in the description below this video. Simply completely cover all of your Rice Krispie treats with the buttercream. This will protect them from the air. Place them in the fridge, and then we will get on to the next step. Now simply pick this up and place it directly onto the baseboard. Simply push this down into place, and I'm going to show you how to prepare the money for your money cake before we continue to construct it. For each pound note that you choose to use, simply place them in a Ziploc bag. This Ziploc bag is 15 centimeters by 10, and it's just a slightly bit too small for the £20 note. So I can still use it, but I need to make sure that I seal off the end, and any excess I bend over and seal that off also. Make sure you get rid of as much air in this process as well. Once it's all stuck together, this is what you're aiming to achieve. Now you need to stick each pound note onto the other. Place a piece of sticky tape both on the front and the back. You're basically wanting to create a chain of money as long as you want to come out of the cake. Now we need to prepare the food safe Tupperware dish that's going to be storing all that lovely cash. Now you can see I've already cut the top of that Tupperware dish away, but now I want to do the same to the lid. I just want to make that rim just a little bit thicker. It's really, really easy to do. You just need a Stanley knife, but just be careful because the plastic is quite sharp. I'm going to speed this section up and then show you how we add the cash into this Tupperware dish that's then going to be going inside your cake. So we're going to have to carve an awful lot of cake away, but so that it can come out really easily. As you can see now, when I add the lid, I've got a much bigger lip on there and somewhere for the cash to actually come out. Okay then, so now we have the basic principle. We've got everything in place. We just need something to be able to pull it out of the tub. So I'm using some florist's wire because that can go directly into the M&M's tongue. The tongue will not be able to hold it, most likely. It will hold it whilst it's on the cake. But as a surprise, I will just tell them to take the tongue off, and then you've got the wires there for them to actually pull and get their present directly out of the centre of the cake. Stick them on with sellotape really well, and then we're going to roll them up and place them in the tub. And I'm going to show you just how simple but effective this process actually is. I'm going to speed this section up for you now. Are you ready to see how easy this is? There we go. It really is as simple as that. Not only is it all food safe, but it's an amazing way to put money inside a cake. Now we need to add money to the cake. Start by adding the buttercream to the cake frame and also the top of those Rice Krispie treats. Now you want to simply add the cake to the top. The buttercream will act as a natural glue. And then we're going to use that Tupperware dish just to create a score mark on the top, and we're going to start carving away some of the cake. This way we will have somewhere to actually put the dish. Once you have cut away all of the cake, simply fill this in with more buttercream. Taking your prepared tub of money, simply place it into the hole that you have just created, and then cover the top and the sides with more buttercream. I'm being very generous with the buttercream. As you can see, it's just a basic crumb coating method. I just want to point out one thing. Be very, very careful. You'll notice I'm paying attention to the front where that gap is for the money. Do not cover that gap up with anything. As you can see just there, look, I'm being very careful with the buttercream to not touch the money with it. I don't want to get it messy on the inside, so just bear that in mind. Completely cover the cake, and then we're going to be putting a cake board on top of this and adding the cake that we will be eating. We don't need to use any cake dowels for the simple fact that we've got the Tupperware dish, and then just under that we've got the cake frame. So now I'm just going to add a simple 8-inch round with half of a dome with lots of jam and buttercream in the centre before we start to decorate. Okay then, so this has been sat in the fridge, and now I'm just going to check that it works correctly. So I'm just going to pull one of those wires, and you can see how it's just come out a little bit there. Pushed it back in there. Now I need to cover that up with something. Those wires are going to be supporting the tongue, but it's actually going to be the mouth that is going to be disguised as. So using a small amount of black fondant, I'm simply going to place it directly onto the cake. Make sure that the drum supports it so the cake will actually be crushing down over the top. And then I will just be cutting it out like a smile with a sharp knife. I'll speed this process up for you. It's really, really simple. It's just something that I'm doing instead of doing it afterwards when we've covered the cake in yellow. It's much easier to always have the black underneath. Now we want to layer up the cake. Start by placing some buttercream on your cake board. This will just act as a natural glue. Next, add your 8-inch round cake, and you want to create a dam around the outside. This will prevent any of the jam from leaking out. Now, add your jam to the centre of the dam. I like to use quite a lot of jam. I'm going to be using about 3/4 of a jar, and this is just an 8-inch round cake. Take your time doing it. I like to use Hartley's as well. Hartley's seedless jam. I find if they've got seeds in, you can sometimes get a little bit of a crunch. And then we're simply going to be covering the top of this jam with more buttercream, but using the piping bag so we don't end up in a sticky mess. Once we have completely filled this cake, it's going to be placed in the fridge before we add the second layer. Now all you need to do is cover the sides, place it in the fridge for about 45 minutes to maybe an hour, depending on the temperature, and then add the final layer of cake. Now this buttercream's lovely and set. Simply picking up your half ball cake. Again, this is an 8-inch half ball, just like the Rice Krispie treats were underneath. Place this on top and completely crumb coat. Again, in total for the whole cake, I've used 3 batches of my buttercream, and you will find a link to this in the description below this video. Granted, this is a very tricky shape to cover, so you do need a high quality fondant. I've coloured it yellow myself, and I'm going to be covering the front half first and then the back half. This particular fondant that I am using is lovely and stretchy. It's very rare you get elephant skin. I've never actually had it with this. And you'll find that with this particular shape, it doesn't break at the bottom, when with gravity, on most things, it would. I'm now going to smooth this out with my hands, and then I'm going to simply cut a straight line, or I say a straight line, it's going to be as straight as I possibly can make it, and then simply add a piece to the back. I will speed this process up so that you can see me cover the actual cake. Using a cocktail stick, I just want to add a little bit of detail. So I'm adding an indentation on the right hand side of the M&M's mouth. I then want to roll out some sausage shapes in the same yellow colour, and I'm going to apply them around the mouth. I'm going to speed this up just so you get an idea. All I'm going to do now is airbrush the M&M. If you're wondering what I've done with the eyes, it's just a small indentation that I've done using a ball tool. That is not the finished product. I'm going to be adding Fondant Accents onto this cake afterwards. Don't worry if you don't have an airbrushing kit. If you do, just cover the mouth with something. Here I've used a bit of kitchen roll just to prevent you making any mistakes by accident. Now, using a very sharp knife, simply cut away very carefully the black fondant, not all of it, just so that the cache inside of the cake can come through very easily. Again, keeping things simple, firstly bend down the floral wire that we're going to be placing the tongue into. You'll notice the tongue on the board. I've just shaped this with my hands. It's only fondant and I'm going to keep it that way. The fondant will not hold when it's actually being pulled away from the cake. That's not the point, it doesn't need to. It just needs to look like it's part of the cake. Those wires are what will get pulled when all of the cache comes out. Take your time with everything. Get it lovely and neat, and you would be none the wiser. I've just added a few M&Ms to his tongue for a few finishing touches. To make the eyes for the M&M, I'm just using some very simple shapes. So this is what I want it to look like. I've already made one of them. And we're going to start with the white fondant. Literally just roll this into a ball shape. Dust down your surface with a small amount of icing sugar, and then we're literally just going to be using our hands to push this down. Once you have the desired shape, then roll out a small amount of the leftover yellow fondant and simply place this on the top of the oval. Using a small amount of edible glue, we will then stick this down and cut off any excess. All you need to do now, using a small amount of both black fondant and then a small amount of white, is add the pupils. Very easy to do, just use your hands and add them to the eyes using some edible glue. So it's being kept very simple, and all we need to do now is add these to the cake. To apply these to the cake, simply add some edible glue, place the eye directly on there, and as you will notice with the first one on the left hand side, there is a cocktail stick just underneath the eye. This will help support it whilst all of that lovely fondant sets lovely and hard. Just to help give them a little bit more character, for the eyebrows, start by rolling a cone shape, and then you want the thinnest part of the cone shape on the outer side of the eye. Just like so, and then just try and maybe level it up, or maybe have that one a little higher than the other one. Just place them anywhere you want on your cake. For the arms, simply roll out 2 sausage shapes, and once you have applied a small amount of edible glue, try and align them up on either side so that they are level with each other. Again, I'm going to keep the hands very simple. So all I've done is rolled out 2 balls of white fondant, roughly the same size. And you'll notice I'm just using my work surface and lots of icing sugar to push them down and get them into the shape that I want. I'm then simply going to cut one line into each hand so that I can do a thumbs up on either side. And using a cocktail stick, just simply add a few indentations so that they look like a couple of fingers. If anything, cake decorating, if there's anything I've learned from cake decorating over the years, simplicity is the best way to go. Sometimes we can overthink things and make them too complicated. These are really, really simple. They look great on the cake. He's doing a little thumbs up. Just keep it nice and simple. And as you can see, I'm not using any cutters or anything, just very basic tools. All we need to do now is apply these to the cake. Again, I do this just using a very small amount of edible glue. So for the boots, I have used the Gem life-sized baby boots cutter, and you want to cut out 2 of each in the template. On the sole of each boot, which you can see here, I am cutting an indentation into it. This is because it needs to be wrapped around the cake frame. Once we have done this, I will then be showing you how to build up that baby boot on the actual cake frame and around the internal support that we already have on there. Start by applying each sole of each shoe directly to the cake frame. Just cut in another little slit and just wrap it around there. You can then secure it into place with a small amount of edible glue. Once this is done, because these are not cake toppers, we then need to fill in the sole of that shoe, just so it looks like it's actually really full and not just an empty baby bootie. So just fill each one with a small amount of fondant, and then we will be using the next template to actually wrap around this. Now simply add the front of each shoe. This will be an awful lot easier as well because you've got that fondant inside there. Using a small amount of edible glue just around the back of the sole, you now want to add the final 2 pieces. Now we just need to add the laces. These can be a little bit fiddly, but all I have here is I've rolled out a very small amount of the same yellow that I actually used to cover the M&M. And then you just want to feed it through those 2 holes that are on these particular shoes, and then just fasten them very gently at the front. And simply repeat this for the other boot. We now just need to cover the legs, and he is pretty much finished. All I am doing for the legs, I have rolled out again the flesh colour, which is the chestnut sugar flare that I've used to colour this fondant. I have then used a very sharp knife to cut directly into the sausage shape that I have rolled out, and I am just wrapping this around the cake frame whilst it's all lovely, soft and pliable. Take your time with this and get it as neat as possible. And this is the finished article. Now obviously there's an awful lot more to this cake because of all of the cash that you're able to hide inside there. But just remember, the principle for the money is the same for any type of cake. So if you want the money to come out of the top, you would just put the slit on that Tupperware dish in a different place. You put it on the top instead. Maybe cover it with sweets just so that it can come out freely. Maybe even use a cake topper, a shop-bought cake topper, to be able to pull it out. I hope I have helped you again today. This one was really exciting for me as it was my dad's 60th birthday. So it's a special one. Happy baking, guys, and I will be back soon with more new free content.